issue about John Dramani Mahama echo UN. Okochechere in semu about slave trade. Any abrofuni jia tum so di ebone. Ya sorry and pay ya. Manas azuri de me yan kana so ono Jimmy for. Dan Kwaku Yeboah. Also, don't pay any cash compensation to our leaders. Dan Kwaku Yeboah so den sa na no ato asem na utie den sama okana. Also, we say slave trade ne koso. Na de John Mahama ye no ya de utie o story ne de okan ya. Na ono ne de okan say mema abrofo no entam sike bia ema ye penifo no because ye penifo no de obonum abai. And you see, sometimes we need to be educated before we speak on such issues. These are issues for intellectuals, people who can read and understand. And the people like Dan Kwaku Yeboah, because they lack that comprehension ability and they don't take their time to follow the issue well. No, I know sometimes I send that was sana. I know who I sent to say the presenting sports, but it's not like that.
Kevin Taylor had to be the money NPP journalist Dan Kwaku Yeboah because Dan Kwaku Yeboah in the Nova to a slave trade and send some air coso UN and I said John Dramani Mahama ediko UN or Dan Kwaku tum. Na Kevin Taylor at Nancy Adrian who say and some of Dan Kwaku Yeboah air can sebi nyansanim. To a tutu bi at the Amano and Yabotre, Joko Yanamichi and Seminimu. Efanchon recently any who John Dramani Mahama ako pager a slave trade and send some bisu HSM. What they call you and say, Omombra me voti, Crow Anasa Mama in me voti, no mon condemn slave trade na a course on Nebusiam. Bear 2 days near, and I don't know money, Mama, as I call back to you and I just say, about one, a course so I in 123 countries are voti against see a slave trade na a course on. Yawo, and then who say, Riasim or be about your money, Mama, Baswa, Dan Kwaku Yeboah, one of them, Dan Kwaku Yeboah, 8 Musem. Move na John Dramani Mahama eteki no very good. Now board John Dramani Mahama abasono the other tie to on ebusuya NSA bibia ma Kevin Taylor eba wonten e betwa e de bona. Dan Kwaku Yeboah ekire mu say hwe na abrofo no ama African leaders bieska for a compensation because African leaders no omoni mo bi enunti na omakopeja sansem we nyina bana. In other words no John Dramani Mahama no ma bi o peska bi e na adi a woman in Tina Copedia and some way in a buy. Na Kevin Taylor say a henny ha, may the tell crown point is a mean casano, mania campaign, and for my John Dramani Mahama. Nebusiam, a cousin so borowa, and Cassette Petil. Kevin Taylor, if you try be the money than Kwaku Yeboah, because what Chemu says, Sebi, when you football, and on Kwaku Yeboah at Nase, I can argue a woman. Wenu, and here will be an argument with Donin Yansa, Nebetimia Cassa, and some way ya. Ono Dan Kwaku Yeboah ewo kan na wan kan yi no mempese me kasa no yenti nsema Kevin Taylor e kan de che Dan Kwaku Yeboah I am Malik Basantali TV so Muhammad ni subscribe share no benya video ni bi enhwe
Issue about John Dramani Mahama echo UN okochechere in semu about slave trade any abrofuni jia tum so di ebone ya sorry and pay ya Manas azuri de me yan kana so ono Jimmy for Dan Kwaku Yeboah. Also, don't pay any cash compensation to our leaders. Dan Kwaku Yeboah so den sa na no ato asem na utie den sama okana. Also, we say slave trade ne koso. Na de John Mahama ye no ya de utie o story ne de okan ya. Na ono ne de okan say mema abrofo no entam sike bia ema ye penifo no because ye penifo no de obonum abai. And you see, sometimes we need to be educated before we speak on such issues. These are issues for intellectuals, people who can read and understand. And the people like Dan Kwaku Yeboah, because they lack that comprehension ability and they don't take their time to follow the issue well. No, I know sometimes I send that was sana. I know who I sent to say the presenting sports, but it's not like that. The John Mahama Kwed were you and Endra, no, it wasn't about money. He wasn't asking any European or American or any foreigner to pay any money to Africans. Because no foreigner, no country can satisfy Africa with money. It's a fact. What John Mahama did yesterday, abe history, it was for people to admit that what Dan Kwaku Yeboah, onana kan swamubi, sebi yedomo fa, nyome bia eni se edini parfum. So the conversation is not about John Mahama going to the UN and speaking for Africans and forcing the oppressor, the slave master to admit that it is not about money. And it is not always about, when people speak about issues like these, it is not about money. And sometimes journalists, these are some of the information that you need to very, very well. You need to make sure, say, your submission when it comes to this kind of very difficult discussions, you need to take your time, take a deep breath, listen, read, take note before you speak. You applauded the president for doing that, that's fine. But remember, don't try and create an impression that whatever happened at the United Nations yesterday was because John Mahama and Africans, no. And when I sit here, when people say, and you have a credit to make Ekufuado, any other president have spoken about slave trade. But the difference between what John Mahama has done and what those other leaders are, Omoka slave trade, and say, John Dramani Mahama, at the end of the day, was able to make sure the slave master admitted to their mistake, their crime. That is the difference between what John Mahama did yesterday and what the other president, at the end of the day, read. Because Ekufuado went to UN to read a script. He did not enforce what was in the script. The other president who spoke on this slave trade issue, they read a script. They did not enforce what was in the script. There's a difference between you going to UN and reading a script. And there's a difference between you doing everything possible to make sure the script you have read, action is taken on. Dear John Mahama, it is a step higher and further from what has happened in the past. So nobody can sit anywhere else and compare Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo recitals at the UN. Compare it to the action John Mahama has taken. Remember, Argentina, in the past, we didn't see Akufo-Addo going to UN to table this as a motion for people to vote on. Because let me tell you something. When it comes to the United Nations, you just don't go there and put something on the table and say, everybody come and vote. It doesn't work like that. Before a country says, I am going to vote for this your motion you have placed on table, and I say at the UN, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. That is where your foreign affairs ministry comes in. They will have to coordinate with these countries, make a case to them that we are all going to the UN. We are going to table this. The reason why we are going to table this, and the reason why it is different from what you have heard in the past, is because what we are about to table, this is what it captures. This is what it stands for. This is what is going to stop. This is what is going to bring. So you need to lobby, make your case behind the scenes before you come to UN and say, I want to table this. And in all these years, you never saw any African leader being bold to come to UN to say, let us vote on this issue. Because you cannot just bring something to UN and say, everybody vote. No. The people who are coming to vote, Obia will interest and Obia will reason to or to Abano. You will have to do what? You will have to convince them. You have to do more than what anyone has done. You have to do something extraordinary for them to say, okay, bring it and let us support what you want us to support. It is not just John Mahama standing there and talking. A lot of work went into this. It means before all these countries, 123 countries, voting for this motion, it means they are taking their time to analyze the person who is bringing this on the table. They will first look at the character behind that issue. Why not decide the way to table so swaba? What does he represent? Does he have credibility? His track record? Is he somebody that we can trust? Is this somebody that he is not going to dilly-dally at the end of the day? Is this somebody who is doing this for himself or doing it for the African continent? So John Mahama say, we admit to say the slave master has done you people wrong. Those people looked at all these things. They just didn't come sit there and say, yes, 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 no. They sat down to analyze the person who is behind that document, the person who is bringing that forward. They need to look at the person and say, our credibility, Anna. Is he being a selfish leader? Is he doing this because he wants money? Is he doing this because he wants to underestimate somebody? Is he doing this because he wants to do what? Disgrace somebody? But they look at the person. They look at the track record. Almost share John Mahama. Consistently, almost follow the message. consistently, almost the political career, consistently, almost consistent when it comes to his beliefs and ideologies. Consistently, they have seen what he represents. Consistently, we say, oh yeah, an African who wants the African to be heard. So, majority of the people who voted and said yes, it wasn't about money. It was about the person, the message, and what it represents. So, don't just look at it like that. And the senka obiako UNA, obetubako table bibisa, let's vote on it. No. There's a lot of work you do behind the scenes. You need to meet these countries. You need to sell your message. You need to let them understand that this is not just a normal document. This is something that will elevate Africa, will change the minds of people against Africa, will to give some confidence to the young African. So it is not just going to the UN and holding a paper and reading, and their white people will say, yeah, yeah. No. Into Kwaku Yeboah in the group, these kind of things, it is too big for your mind. You are not there yet. You don't understand these kind of things. You need a very strong collaboration between your country and other foreigners, other countries that are representing their countries on the UN board. Enti mamu hu ne trakeke say an John Mahama ko UN and John Mahama ko UN no the oya ne say wako redeem abrofo ajatum oju say easy. You think it's a joke that John Mahama just read? Now, ade abrofo to no omu John Mahama so nipada. Abrofo to no, is this the first time they have seen an African leader speak about the reparation and slave trade? They have seen lots and lots of them. Nana do dan Kwaku for call a year or call a year UN African trade once they saw him like a goat. They saw him like a goat. He was just rattling. He was just accenting himself. He was just trying to tell the white man, I can speak stupid grammar. They saw him as a joke. They didn't respect him because they saw that all that he was doing there was an act. And until that, Nana do dan Kwaku Fuado, when he went to the UN to go and speak about blah, 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 and they saw him as a joker. They all ignored him because Omu said, it's just for politics. He did not mean it. He did not believe in them. But you see, when John Mahama engaged these countries, 123 countries, he made them understand. He explained to them. It's almost an assessment, They spoke to their leaders. The representatives, no more UN, no. They spoke to their leaders. Every single person there spoke to their president and said, Mr. President, the president of Ghana is tabling something here, and it's about slave trade. We are also white people. Some of us were involved in that. Do you want us to agree? Then the president will ask the representative, what is he talking about? Do you believe what he's saying? Have you read it? Have you checked the person? This president, do you know him? What is his track record? They look at these things before they are like, yes, our president said yes. So it should tell you the number of presidents around the world who respect John Dramani Mahama. And then no Jimmy. He was speaking, they were not even listening. Because this guy came with an accent like an English dog. They could not even verify his accent. Nane Akufo-Addo, Kasana Okano, is he a Ghanaian? Is he a British? Is he an American? What kind of accent is he using? They saw him as a fake doll. So they didn't even respect him in the first place because he was pretending. He was not being himself. They did not know whether he was an African or he was a Russian toy or he was an English toy. They did not even believe where he was coming from. So they were not excited to even follow his message. But when John Mahama went there and spoke as an African, behaved as an African, was honest like an African, they looked at his track record and saw an African in him. They all agreed that this man is telling us the painful truth and that we have committed crimes against him and his people. So let us all admit. So this is a big deal. Dan Kwaku Yeboah we asomamo. Sanyoma we mu Peace FM4, OK FM nisa insha montiasie esondodo. You don't understand this. We no ewa sumamu. In China, this conversation, munjai mayaneye. Margin endu sa level no. Or chi binim kwane ade endu sa level no. In China, munchi hu free sa nkomo we mu. Mama fam hu meshem. It was not about money. It was not about fame. Inti mamu make that statement because say memo be in terms sikama African leaders. Now African leaders or more Africa can abrofo betwa mo sikama mo save Africa problem nyina. They can't. Bonnie Abrofudi Africans, no amount of money can solve that problem, can reverse that crime. It is not about the money. Yes, Ramo. And we just want to understand something. Mr. President, the All African Games, we want to know the investigations, how far. Because Dan Kwaku Yeboah in the team, almost 15 days, and we are 15 million. So we are asking for a year Ghana for Mr. President. Mahama orders forensic audit into 13th All African Games. We want to know, Mr. President, how far with the All African Games audit? No? Dan Kwaku Yeboah and his group, they organized that event. We want to know the audit. We want Dan Kwaku Yeboah them to come and explain to us how millions of dollars they use the money to organize the All African Games. We want to know. Dan Kwaku Yeboah and Namgana, Omo Diesika, Ebimu ya Kromfo. So, Mr. President, this is a reminder. Dan Kwaku Yeboah, they are supposed to be in jail by now. They are supposed to be facing trial. So I don't know why the forensic audit has taken long. The Attorney General, the CID office, whoever is in charge of the investigations, we want to get to the bottom of that forensic audit. How far with the All African Games forensic audit investigations? Dan Kwaku Yeboah mo peso mu mi busa mo. Dan Kwaku Yeboah any group na organizing All African Games, no, they want to know. Say forensic audit. Where is the former sports minister? That former sports minister, Ochukwuko for fucking. This one chop some. This one chop. Now me telling can't check. Now say press conference. I'm asking you, Mr. P, what's that?